You know, we talk a lot about overthinking failure, but have you ever stopped to think about overthinking success? It's this strange, fascinating paradox, the idea that we can subconsciously sabotage the very thing we're working so hard for. So in this explainer, we're going to dive into the clinical psychology behind why that actually happens. So I want you to just start with this question. We're all conditioned to believe that the fear of failure is the number one thing that holds us back. But what if the real roadblock, the one that truly paralyzes us, isn't failure at all? And this lays out the core conflict perfectly. On one side, you've got the familiar fear of not reaching your goal. But on the other, there's this hidden roadblock, the fear of success itself. Now, from a clinical point of view, this isn't really about winning or losing. It's about a much deeper, more primal fear of the massive, unpredictable change that success forces into our lives.
Okay, so here's how we're going to unpack all this. We're going to look at 4 key psychological drivers. We'll start with how success can actually threaten our very identity. Then we'll get into the intense pressure that comes with a real performance. And finally, we'll look at the mind's own internal veto system, basically how it hits the brakes on our ambition.
So let's dive into this unexpected fear. At its heart, this has nothing to do with a lack of ambition. Nope, it's all about a really powerful internal resistance to the kind of personal transformation that real success demands. It's a fight between what we think we want and who we're terrified of becoming.
And that leads us straight into the first major hurdle, the threat to identity. For a lot of people, success doesn't feel like a reward. It feels like a threat to their very existence. This is especially true if your entire sense of self has been built around the struggle to succeed. And this threat to our identity, it usually shows up in 2 really powerful ways. First, there's this deep fear of losing yourself. It's the anxiety that success is going to warp you into someone you don't even recognize, maybe someone more distant, more obsessed with achievement than people. It's a very real fear of a fundamental personality shift. But then there's the other side of it, which is just as powerful, the attachment to the chase itself. I mean, when you've spent years hustling, planning, striving, that whole process becomes who you are. So achieving the goal, well, that means the journey's over. And that can feel less like a victory and more like you're losing a huge part of your identity.
This quote just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? The very moment of triumph can feel like grief. Grief for the person you were during the chase. In clinical work, we see this all the time. It feels like a loss because, in a very real sense, a part of your identity just retired.
Okay, so this brings us to our next big idea, the pressure of reality. Because once success stops being a safe little dream in your head and becomes a concrete, real-world thing, the rules of the game totally change. The comfort of potential is gone, and now you're faced with the intense scrutiny of actual performance.
In this pressure, it creates 2 really clear patterns of avoidance. The first one is a profound fear of being seen clearly. See, as long as you're chasing a goal, you have the safety blanket of your potential. You get judged on what you could be. But the second you succeed, that shield is gone. This fear of being exposed leads right into the second pattern, feeling the immense weight of a final decision. When every action feels like it's permanent and it's going to be judged by everyone, it's so easy to get paralyzed. You're so scared of making the wrong move that you end up making no move at all.
And that is the absolute crucial shift. Success means you can't hide behind possibilities anymore. The comfort of what if gets replaced by the vulnerability of what is. It's just you and your results, right out in the open. This is exactly why perfectionism so often leads to procrastination. It's not really about getting it right. It's about avoiding that moment of judgment. That moment when your work is seen as final and, inevitably, imperfect. It's a defense mechanism against that very uncomfortable reality.
And that leads us to our final section, which is the mind's internal veto. These last couple of behaviors are really sophisticated, subconscious forms of self-sabotage. Think of it as your mind's way of slamming on the emergency brakes to keep you safe from the discomfort of major growth.
From a clinical standpoint, there's a name for this. It's called cognitive resistance. It's the mind's subconscious playbook for creating roadblocks to avoid the pain of significant change. And I want to be really clear here. This is not a character flaw. It is a deeply ingrained defense mechanism.
So this internal veto, it usually works in 2 main ways. The first is living out your success entirely in your head. This is where you mentally rehearse the achievement so vividly. You imagine the praise, the relief, the rewards, that it actually reduces the urgency to do it in the real world. You've already cashed the emotional check, so why do the work? The second way is this powerful subconscious resistance to a new environment. Success often means you have to leave behind familiar habits, people, and comfort zones. And even if you consciously want to grow, there's a powerful part of you that will fight tooth and nail to stay right where it's safe and familiar.
And this right here really gets to the heart of the internal conflict. It's not a lack of ambition that holds people back. It's a subconscious calculation where the perceived cost of success, losing your identity, your comfort, your familiar world, feels way heavier than the reward.
So, let's just do a quick recap of the core fears we've walked through. We have the fear of losing your identity, of being judged without any excuses, the fear of the chase just being over, of outgrowing your world, and that crushing pressure of imperfection. The most important thing is to see these not as weaknesses, but as totally understandable defense mechanisms your mind uses to protect you from massive change.
And that leaves us with this final, powerful question to think about. If it's not the fall you're actually afraid of, what part of the climb? Is it the visibility, the responsibility, the change itself? What part are you really trying to avoid? Because figuring that out, well, that's the key to finally getting out of your own way.